Hello and welcome to Cook from the Hip. My name is Kevin and I'll be showing you how I make this. So let's get started. What you need. We're going to start with our wet ingredients. This yeast mixed into this warm water, then flour and salt into this big bowl. When the yeast is ready, mix everything into this big bowl with lots of olive oil, rosemary, and a bit of garlic today. When we bake this, we're going to slice these tomatoes to put on top, and we're going to put more olive oil on the top with some salt. And I'm making 2 loaves today, so here's 2 bowls, 2 towels will get moist, put that over, let them rise. When you're working with a lot of rosemary like we are now, I like to just pop off the top, and then all the rosemary leaves go up. So if we grab it at the top and just kind of carefully strip it downwards, no more leaves. And we can really easily just separate those, and we have rosemary. Done. So that helps a lot working quickly, getting through all this rosemary. Okay. A good way to store herbs is to wrap it up with a moist paper towel, then put it in some plastic, seal it up. We're going to give it some moisture. We want it to stay fresh because I don't know when I'm going to use this next. Now my yeast has had a chance to wake up in the warm water. We've got our flour and salt. We've got our rosemary. Crap, I need to do the garlic. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bowl in the middle of the flour and salt mixture there. Then I'm going to get our yeast and water in the bowl. We'll go ahead and throw the olive oil in there as well. I'm never shy with olive oil, and with focaccia, neither should you be. So we're gonna then mix from the bowl, the middle of the bowl, and work our way outwards. Right now it looks like it's just really wet, but as we go out to the edges of that bowl where the flour is, it'll start mixing with the water and it will eventually start getting dough. Before we get too carried away, let's make sure we get our rosemary in there. And you know what? I forgot to chop the rosemary. So I'm gonna quick chop the rosemary, then we're gonna get it in there. This dough is very wet, which is actually the problem I was hoping to have. If your dough at this point is already dry and crumbly, it's too dry, it's not going to be good, it's going to be hard to work with. So this is what I love to work with. I just add more flour into it as I work with it. And then it'll be fluffy and the texture that I'm looking for. I've got my flour ready to add into here. If it's really wet, kind of like this is, like I don't want to touch that. I know I'll get really sticky right away. So I'm gonna add some flour into here and mix it up. And what you want to see, this needs to stay together. We don't want all this gunk sticking to the sides of our pan. We want it to be together. It's still really sticky, so I'm just trying to get as much flour as I can coated on this thing. I'm going to make sure there's flour on the bottom of the loaf. We're going to let it rest while I talk for a minute about how I know that this is going to be a great loaf of bread. It feels soft and fluffy at this point. Like I said before, if it starts too dry, it will be dense and hard to work with and dry. The texture won't be good. So I always start with a little bit too much water so that I can add flour to it as I work with it. And then I can watch it get to the right consistency and then just stop right where we need to. Now let's talk about kneading. Fold it over and just roll it into itself. Flip it a quarter turn, fold it over, roll it into itself. Fold it over, roll it into itself gently, just using the heels of my hand. Look at that, it's connected. So it constantly just reforms and works through that gluten. And what we need is that gluten to break down so the yeast can eat it and do all the things it needs to do, and it's going to be the right texture and it's going to be delicious. After working with this dough for a few minutes, I'm seeing it's pretty much ready to go. It's not super sticky anymore. As I'm adding more flour into it, it holds its dryness, it holds its shape, it's not sticking too much to my hands anymore. This loaf is ready to go. How we know that it's ready? Poke, and it rebounds. This is ready to go. It's spongy, it's fluffy. Earlier when you poke it, it will stay depressed, but this is rebounding quite nicely. This is a large loaf. I'm gonna cut it in half, oil a couple of bowls, lightly oil a couple of bowls, and I'm going to dampen these towels, get it in there, and let them rise for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. Your dough wants to double in size. Put your dough in there, make sure every surface is covered. We just want to keep that dough nice and moist, and the oil helps coat it, keep it moist. And we moisten our towel to also keep the dough nice and moist. Put it somewhere relatively warm, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Clean our counter and wait. Record. Record. Okay, and we're back. We've got one of the loaves we'll do first. The bread has doubled in size. We are ready to continue. We have preheated the oven to 400 degrees. Now we shape this into a loaf, get it into a pan, smother it with olive oil and some salt, and we are ready. We've got our toppings. We're gonna smother that thing in olive oil. We're gonna put those tomatoes on, a bunch of kosher salt, and a little bit of vegan Parmesan cheese. Now, slices of regular Parmesan cheese would be just fine here. Let's get this in the pan. First, some olive oil. We're not shy here. Now focaccia is a flatbread, so we're just spreading this out. I'm using my fingertips so I get a lot of dimples in there. I like when focaccia has a little bit of texture on the top. I never use a rolling pin here because I want it to hold on to that fluffiness that we got while it was rising. So just spreading it out flat. This is good enough. Next, lots of olive oil over the top. You could brush a small amount on here, but I just smother all over. I'm going to do 2 layers of salt. First layer of salt is on the bread. Second layer will go over the top of the tomatoes. The salt you want for this is like big crystals, like a sea salt. This is an ancient kosher sea salt, blah, blah, blah. You could just do table salt over the top, but it would not be the same. And this goes into the oven for about 20 minutes. Another loaf of focaccia. I let this one cook a little bit longer. You'll know when it's done. It's a little bit flexible, but you'll be looking for brown along the bottom edge. If the top starts getting brown, just little bits here and there, like at the peaks, the top is just starting to get brown, that's plenty good. You don't want to let it get too overcooked. A lot of brown on top, it's probably going to be hard. You can see the bottom is golden brown, but not dark. So this is focaccia, and I think it turned out really good. And yours can too, if you follow what we did here today. It takes a bit of time to prepare, but it is so good. It's always worth taking time to make this. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I would really be grateful. And if you've done this before, let us know in the comments what you do, what you put on it, because I love to see different focaccias with different toppings. There's so many different things you can do. What's your favorite? So get your tush in the kitchen, make something delicious, and I'll see you next time.